Thank you for choosing American Pest CEUs. Hi, I'm Sean Reeves. I'm an Associate Certified Entomologist with American Pest CEUs. I've been in the pest management industry since 1999, and I'll be your instructor for today's course. Today's course was compiled by Jack Launius, who has served in the pest management industry since 1990. Part 1. Northeast Corps Manual, Chapters 1 through 3. Chapter 1. As with any profession, that of a pesticide applicator comes with its own vocabulary. Throughout your training, you will learn many new terms, as well as new meanings for words with which you're already familiar. Yet there are a handful of terms that are so basic to what you will do as a pesticide applicator, it is best to define them right from the start. We will define and briefly discuss these terms here and will cover them in greater depth in later chapters. In addition to the definitions provided here, your state laws and regulations may have specific definitions for some of the terms. Be sure to become familiar with any such definitions. Before we can talk about groups of pests and the damage they can cause, we need to agree on just what makes something a pest. Though each person will have their own perspective on this, a farmer will worry about the crop, a homeowner about the lawn, a line crew about trees encroaching power lines, and a bakery about food contamination. These diverse perspectives all point to a common definition. A pest is any living thing that has an undesirable impact on something that is important to us. Notice two things about this definition. First, a pest might be any living thing. Many people mistakenly think that the word pest refers only to insects. Second, this definition isn't concerned with what the living thing is, but rather what it does. It is the impact a living thing has that determines whether or not it is a pest. For example, grass is a desirable plant when it grows in a lawn, but is considered a weed, a type of pest, when it grows in a flower garden or in sidewalk cracks. A pesticide is any substance or mixture of substances used to kill pests or to prevent or reduce the damage pests cause. For example, a pesticide might kill a pest directly, attract it with a substance other than food to a trap, repel it, or prevent it from developing or mating. Therefore, even repellents are pesticides. Also, because a pest can be any living thing that has an undesirable impact, the word pesticide refers to substances that control all sorts of pests. Therefore, substances that control insects or weeds or rodents or any other type of pest are all pesticides. As you can see on the current slide, these are all examples of pests. Take a moment or two to identify each type of pest you're seeing on the slide here. What about a mousetrap, or flypaper, or bug zappers, blacklight traps? These are used to control pests, but are they pesticides? The simple answer is no, because they are not substances or a mixture of substances. Products which use purely mechanical or physical means to combat pests are called pest control devices. A device is any mechanical instrument other than a firearm intended for trapping, destroying, repelling, or mitigating any pest. Other examples of pest control devices include tillage equipment for weed control, fish traps, and devices that move or make sounds in an attempt to scare away pests such as birds and mice. Pesticide regulations do not pertain to pest control devices. However, if a pest control device is packaged together with a substance that helps control the pest, e.g., a trap that lures pests with a chemical attractant, then the combination is considered a pesticide product and is therefore subject to pesticide regulations. While pesticides are useful in controlling pests, they are usually only part of a complete pest management program. In fact, most pest situations cannot be brought under control if you rely only on pesticides. Consider this. Will any amount of pesticide keep your home free of insects? If you leave your windows open all night, but don't have window screens, window screens provide another way of preventing a pest problem from developing. Integrated Pest Management, or IPM, is an approach to pest management in which we combine all available necessary techniques into a unified program with the goal of managing pest populations in a way that avoids pest damage and minimizes adverse effects. Essentially, we want to minimize the risk posed by both the pest and by our pest control methods. Window screens reduce the risk of pest invasion and, as we will see in the later chapters, pose less risk to our health than pesticides do. As a result, window screens are a first line of defense against home pests and are a critical component in any structural IPM program. Pesticides are also part of the IPM program when they help achieve the goal of minimizing risk. We have said a pesticide is used to control pests. In that sense, the word used refers to the application of the pesticide. However, pesticide use includes other activities as well, including the transport and storage of a pesticide after the manufacturer's seal has been broken, mixing pesticides, cleaning pesticide equipment, and disposal of pesticides and pesticide containers. Therefore, anyone who performs any of these tasks is using a pesticide. Some states may broaden this definition of pesticide use. For example, a state might also consider making pesticide recommendations to be a form of pesticide use. The term use rhymes with use can also refer to where and how a pesticide can be applied. For example, control of Japanese beetle grubs and turf might be one use of an insecticide. Such uses are listed on the pesticide label discussed later. With respect to pesticide application, the term site does not necessarily mean location. Rather, it means the particular entity to which a pesticide is or could be applied. For example, when a pesticide is applied in the backyard, the site might be turf if it was applied to the lawn, whereas backyard would be the location. Likewise, a garden, pesticide isn't really applied to a garden, but rather to particular plants or soil within a garden, and it might be meant for use on flowers, but not on vegetables, or for use on some vegetables, but not others. The site would be the soil or particular plants to which the pesticide could be applied. Continuing with the example of a garden pesticide, how would you know if it could be used on flowers or vegetables or both? And on which flowers or vegetables? The answer to these questions and to so many others you will have about using a pesticide are on the pesticide label. The label is the information about the product and its use that is printed on or attached to the pesticide container at the time of purchase. Labeling includes the label itself, plus all other information referenced on the label, received from the manufacturer about the product when you buy it, such as brochures and leaflets, and or approved by regulatory agencies regarding the uses of the product. Pesticide labeling gives you instructions on how to use the product legally and correctly. If a pesticide label states that the product can be used on a particular garden vegetable, such as tomatoes, then we say the pesticide is labeled for use on tomatoes. When used this way, the term labeled simply means that the use is listed on and allowed by the pesticide product label. Labeled can also be used to describe a container which holds a pesticide and to which the appropriate pesticide label has been attached. Examples include the pesticide product container, a piece of application equipment, and a bulk pesticide storage tank. The pesticide label and other labeling are critically important to you for two main reasons. First, the label, along with other labeling, provides the information you need to use the product as effectively and as safely as possible. Among other things, this information includes the name of the product and of the ingredients that control the pest, who makes or distributes the pesticide, whether or not there are restrictions as to who can purchase or use the pesticide, information about hazards to human health and the environment, safety precautions and first aid measures, and directions for using the pesticide. Throughout the chapters, we will refer to information that you can find on the pesticide label. We will do this to help you learn how to read and use a pesticide label and to impress upon you the fact that the label is the single most important resource for a pesticide applicator. Because of concerns regarding pesticide risk, federal and state regulations make it against the law to use a pesticide in a manner inconsistent with its labeling. That is, you must follow the directions listed on the label and in other labeling for the product. However, if state law is stricter than the directions on the pesticide label, you must comply with state law. Going back to our garden pesticide as an example, suppose a pesticide is labeled for use on flowers, but not on vegetables. One possible reason for this is that the manufacturer knew that people could get sick if they ate vegetables that had been treated with the pesticide. Another possibility is that the manufacturer did not have data one way or the other as to whether people would get sick from eating treated vegetables. In either case, it should be obvious that applying the pesticide to vegetables in violation of the label directions presents too much risk, which is why such an application is illegal. We will address many aspects of risk in this manual, and in each case, we will show how following label directions can help you minimize such risk to yourself, to others, and to the environment. Now that you have a basic understanding of the terms that were covered in this chapter, we can move forward to more fully discuss these and other topics that are important to you as a pesticide applicator. Chapter 2. We will address these topics as we talk about different pests from within each of the four main groups of pests: insects and other vertebrates, animals that lack backbones; vertebrates, animals with backbones such as rodents; plants and microorganisms such as fungi, bacteria, and viruses. Looking at our definition of a pest, there are many kinds of living things and many things that are important to us. That means there can be many types of problems that pests can cause, including structural damage. Termites weaken structural wood in houses and other buildings, resulting in unsafe conditions and expensive repairs. Wood-destroying microorganisms can cause the framing around a window or exterior door to rot away. Property damage. Clothes moths can ruin materials such as clothes and bedding that are made of natural fibers. Mice can gnaw their way into food cabinets or reduce the effectiveness of insulation by using it as nesting material. Food concerns. Blackbirds will feast on grapes growing in a vineyard. Microorganisms cause plant diseases that reduce the yield and/or value of a farmer's crop. Insect pests can feed on dried foods such as flour, chocolate chips, or cereals in a kitchen pantry. Weeds affect our food supply when they reduce yields by competing with crop plants for water, sunlight, and soil nutrients. Health risk. Mosquitoes can spread diseases such as West Nile virus and encephalitis. Houseflies contaminate food with microbes that cause food poisoning and dysentery. Mice and rats carry microbes that cause salmonellosis. Mice and rats carry microbes that cause salmonellosis, a form of food contamination. Poison ivy and giant hogweed cause irritating and even dangerous skin reactions. Pets and farm animals are at risk from fleas, ticks, and biting flies, and from microorganisms that produce toxins in stored grain fed to livestock. Risk to the environment. Pests can have significant environmental impacts, especially when they are accidentally brought into an area for the first time. Examples of defoliation of forests by gypsy moth caterpillars and disruption of aquatic environments by plants that displace native plants that provide food and shelter to aquatic animals. The emerald ash borer and Asian longhorn beetle have recently been introduced into our area and can kill healthy trees. Reduced aesthetics. An attractive landscape is important to homeowners and helps put a good public face on business. Pests that damage lawns, flowers, and woody ornamentals detract from the landscape and can reduce property values. However, there is often more than just aesthetics involved. A school has an obligation to protect children who are allergic to bee stings, so controlling flowering weeds on school grounds is a health issue. Likewise, people can sprain an ankle if they walk over a lawn riddled with mole tunnels. Impaired functions of things we use. Pests interfere with our safe and efficient use of things. Turf pests make athletic fields less safe for students because thick turf provides better footing and cushioned falls. Plants growing along roadways may create a hazard by reducing visibility of signs and the roadway. Tree roots can grow into and clog septic and drain lines. The fuel efficiency and maneuverability of a boat are hindered when algae and mollusks grow on the boat's hull. What is it that draws pests to us and to those things we value and need? Quite simply, all organisms have a common set of basic needs in order to survive. Pests come into conflict with us because they are in need of one or more of the following. Food. We've already listed some examples, such as insects that eat dried foods in people's homes. Keep in mind that what is food to a pest isn't necessarily what we think of as food. Some pests eat wood, wool, paper, or even wallpaper glue. You're seeing here in the image damage from book lice or sosids. Water. Insects such as earwigs often end up inside a home because they were searching for water. This is why they are often found near plumbing. Tree roots can grow into and clog septic and drain lines as the trees seek out water sources. Shelter. Carpenter ants hollow out structural wood in buildings not because they eat wood, but because they use it for shelter as they rear their young. Insects such as cluster flies, multicolored Asian lady beetles, and brown marmorated stink bugs invade homes in autumn because they need a protected spot in which to overwinter. They neither feed nor reproduce inside. Breeding sites. Where an organism reproduces can be critical to the survival of the young. Some wasps build nests under eaves to protect the young from weather and predators. Pests may find that one spot meets more than one survival need. Breeding sites especially tend to be where there is food and/or shelter. Still, it's important to know why pests are attracted to a given site. Understanding these needs and how pests seek them out is critical to being able to control pests. Integrated pest management, also known as IPM, programs rely on this knowledge to meet the goals of avoiding pest damage and minimizing adverse effects. Insects are vertebrates, animals without backbones, and outnumber all other animals on Earth. So it's not surprising that they are perhaps our biggest pest problem. Because of this, we will go into more detail about insects than other pests. Adult insects have 3 pairs of jointed legs for a total of 6 legs. Adult spiders, ticks, centipedes, and millipedes have more than 6 legs and therefore are not insects. Adult insects also have 3 distinct body regions: the head, thorax, and abdomen. However, the separation between the thorax and abdomen is not always easy to see. Each region is covered by a hard, protective skin called an exoskeleton and performs different functions. The insect head bears mouthparts, eyes, and antennae. Mouthparts. Mouthparts vary among groups of insects, so you can use them to help identify a pest insect and the sort of damage it does. Therefore, it is important that you are aware of these types of insect mouthparts. In the current image, you're seeing the different types of mouthparts. Remember these as we mention them left to right. You have the chewing and biting type all the way on the left. Just to the right of that, we have the piercing and sucking type. Next, to the right, we have the sponge type. And last, all the way on the right, we have the siphoning type. We're going to go into these in the next few slides. Chewing mouthparts have 2 jaws that bite and tear the food. Beetles, cockroaches, ants, and grasshoppers have chewing mouthparts. These insects can cause damage in a number of ways, such as by eating plants, tunneling into structural wood, or chewing holes in fabric. Piercing, sucking mouthparts are slender tubes that are focused into plant or animal tissue to suck out fluids or blood. Mosquitoes and aphids have piercing, sucking mouthparts. Insects with these mouthparts weaken plants and animals with their feeding, and some transmit disease-causing organisms. Disease-causing organisms are called pathogens. Animals that spread them while feeding are called vectors. For example, mosquitoes are vectors of pathogens that cause malaria. Sponging mouthparts are tongue-like structures that suck up liquids or food that can be made liquid by the insect's vomit. Many flies, e.g. houseflies, feed this way. These insects can contaminate our food by depositing pathogens from their mouthparts as they feed. Siphoning mouthparts are long tubes used for sucking nectar. Butterflies and moths have siphoning mouthparts. Antennae. Adult insects have a pair of antennae that provide the sense of smell and touch. Insects use them to locate and identify food and mates. Antennae vary greatly among insects, so we can use them to help identify pest insects. Antennae can be short or long, straight or bent, of one or more colors, and of many different shapes, e.g. thread-like, saw-like, feathered, clubbed, or beaded. The thorax or middle body region has 3 pairs of legs and sometimes 1 or 2 pairs of wings. In the current image, you're seeing several types of insect antennae. Take a few moments to review the antenna and the insects they are attached to. Legs. Leg features such as length, position, held under the body or out to the side, and the presence of hair or spines can be useful in identifying an insect. Sometimes a pair of legs is specialized for a particular function, e.g. jumping for fleas and grasshoppers, creating chirping sounds to attract mates for crickets. In the current image here, you're seeing several types of leg structures for insects. Take a few moments to review these leg structures. Wings. Insects are the only invertebrates that have wings. Most kinds of adult insects have 2 pairs of wings. The front wings, called forewings, may be very different from the hind wings. For example, the hard shell that covers most of a beetle's body is actually made of its forewings. Flies have only 1 pair of actual wings. The hind wings have become modified. They are very small and act like rudders in flight. Some adult insects do not have wings. The most common example is the worker ant, which is the ant life stage you typically see. In ants, only males and queens have wings. Worker ants are adult females but do not mate. Insects such as fleas, lice, and bedbugs that are parasites of animals also often do not have wings. When wings are present, their markings and the patterns of veins on membranous wings are often used to identify insect species. The insect abdomen contains digestive and reproductive organs as well as openings that allow the insect to breathe. The shape of the abdomen, whether or not it is covered by the wings, and the presence or absence of filaments help identify an insect. Insects are such a large and varied group that we can only touch on the many ways in which they reproduce, develop, and spread. In most insects, a female lays fertilized eggs, either singly or in groups. Their shape, size, color, and placement can often be used to identify the insect species. Some bees produce young from unfertilized eggs, and aphids can give birth to live young. In most insects, there is a notable change as the young insect develops into an adult. This process is called metamorphosis. In all insects, only the adults can reproduce. As the insect grows to adulthood, it must repeatedly shed or molt its exoskeleton. Each stage between molts is called an instar. As you're seeing on the screen here, this slide shows on the top complete metamorphosis versus incomplete metamorphosis. You can see in complete metamorphosis, the insect goes through an egg, larva, pupa, and adult stage, whereas in incomplete metamorphosis, the insect only goes through the egg, nymph, and adult stage. No metamorphosis. With a few insects, including silverfish, firebrats, and springtails, there is almost no change except in size as the insect develops. With no metamorphosis, the life stages are referred to as egg, young, and adult. Adults do not have wings. Gradual metamorphosis. In gradual metamorphosis, insects pass through 3 stages of development: egg, nymph with multiple instars, and adult. Nymphs resemble small adults in form and feeding behavior and live in the same environment. Wings, if any, develop gradually during each instar and are fully developed only in the adult stage. Insects that pass through gradual metamorphosis include cockroaches, termites, grasshoppers, and aphids. Complete metamorphosis. There are 4 stages of development during complete metamorphosis: egg, larva with multiple instars, pupa, and adult. The young, called larvae, include caterpillars, maggots, and grubs. They look very different from adults. Larvae lack antennae and may even lack legs. Some even have different mouth parts than the adults. Insects that pass through complete metamorphosis include beetles, moths, flies, ants, fleas, and wasps. The larvae and adults also often live in different habitats and eat different food. For example, a caterpillar has chewing mouth parts and may eat leaves, whereas the adult butterfly has siphoning mouth parts and sips nectar from flowers. Even if the mouth parts are similar, the damage caused may be different. Japanese beetle larvae, for example, live in the soil and eat grass roots while adults feed on leaves of ornamental plants. While in the pupal stage, the larva changes into an adult with legs, wings, antennae, and a functional reproductive system. Insects are so small and infest so many foods, domestic animals, and goods that they can be spread by almost any means imaginable. Many adults can fly long distances. Wood-infesting beetle larvae can be transported within firewood and wooden packing crates. Several important pests first entered our country in wooden crates and pallets. Bedbugs can be carried on personal belongings and even in moving vans that once held infested items. Spiders, ticks, mites, millipedes, and centipedes are similar to insects in habit, appearance, and size, as well as in having exoskeleton. Nematodes and mollusks can also be pests. Arachnids include spiders, mites, and ticks. You can tell them from insects because arachnids have 8 legs in the adult stage, insects have 6, have 2 body regions, insects have 3, and lack wings and antennae. Spiders exhibit no metamorphosis. They have chewing mouth parts and are usually beneficial because they feed on insects. However, they are an unattractive nuisance in buildings, and some can inflict painful bites that require medical attention. They can spread by being accidentally transported by people or by ballooning, in which they use their silk to float on the wind. Ticks and mites undergo a slightly more complicated form of gradual metamorphosis. They hatch as a six-legged larva. The larva then molt into eight-legged nymphs. Except for the fact that the larvae only have 6 legs, both the larvae and nymphs look like smaller versions of the adult stage. Ticks and mites have piercing, sucking mouthparts. Ticks are blood feeders and sometimes transmit diseases such as Lyme disease. Mites are more varied. Some prey on insects and others on mites. Some feed on agricultural and ornamental plants, and a few types are parasites of man and domestic animals. The varroa mite is a serious pest in honeybee colonies. Ticks and mites are spread as animals move or as infested plants are transported. Centipedes are flat, long, worm-like animals with one pair of legs on each body segment. They move quickly and have chewing mouthparts with poisonous jaws, with which they capture and feed on insects, spiders, and other small animals. Centipedes are found in protected places such as under tree bark or in rotting logs. Millipedes have a cylindrical shape like an earthworm and have 2 pairs of legs on each body segment. The mouth parts are adapted to feeding on decaying organic material. Thus, they are found in decaying leaf litter, rotting logs, and damp debris. Millipedes and centipedes exhibit no metamorphosis. They spread mainly by crawling to new spots and become pests when they invade structures in search of water or shelter. Centipedes can sometimes inflict painful bites on people. Nematodes are microscopic roundworms. Some feed on plant roots by sucking plant cell contents through a straw-like mouthpart. This causes wilting, stunting, and reduced crop yield. Some nematodes can spread plant disease organisms while feeding. Other nematodes are parasites of pets and livestock and cause problems such as heartworm in dogs and worms in livestock. Nematodes spread in infested soil, plants, and animals. Dog heartworm is spread and vectored by mosquitoes. Mollusks, including shipworms, barnacles, and zebra mussels, are freshwater and marine animals that can cause damage by their search for shelter. Shipworms bore protective burrows into marine pilings and fiberglass boat hulls. Barnacles and mussels protect themselves from wave action by attaching to hard surfaces. They can clog water intake pipes or reduce a boat's fuel efficiency by clinging to its hull. Mollusks spread on hull surfaces, in ship ballast water, and on the feet of water birds such as ducks and gulls. Slugs are terrestrial mollusks and can be plant pests, especially in greenhouses. They feed by rasping at plant tissue, often creating holes in leaves or even killing young seedlings. Rodents and some species of birds and fish are among the very few vertebrates that are pests. Rodents include rats and mice. They readily invade our homes and food storages and consume large amounts of crops, especially grains, in fields and in storage. They also feed on and contaminate food in homes, grocery stores, and food processing plants. Rodents also spread human diseases. It is the rat flea that transmits bubonic plague, and white-footed mice carry Lyme disease, which is spread by ticks. Rodents can also transmit disease directly to people, as is the case with the deer mouse and hantavirus. Their front teeth never stop growing, so rats and mice must gnaw constantly to wear the teeth down. This can damage structural wood and even start electrical fires when the insulation around the wiring is gnawed through. Rodents also gain access to food and shelter by gnawing through wood, cardboard, and plastic. Rodents spread locally on foot. They also move long distances in trains and ships that carry infested grains. Starlings and grackles can be agricultural pests, stealing small fruit-like grapes and berries right off the plants and eating stored grain and feed. Pigeons cause problems just by roosting in attics and on ledges. Their droppings make a mess, contain pathogens that cause disease in people, and can even damage the finish on cars. Pest birds can spread from flying from one location to another. Fish can be pests when a species becomes established in an area in which it is not native. The fish might have been released as sport fish, as unwanted pets, or perhaps in ballast water. These invasive fish, such as the northern snakehead fish, may outcompete or prey on native fish that are more desirable and may disrupt the aquatic ecosystem in other ways. Even native fish can be a problem if they become so numerous as to make an area unsuitable for desirable sport fish or interfere with fishery operations. Plant pests are called weeds. A weed is simply any plant which is growing where it's not wanted, such as grass in a flower garden. Weeds can be terrestrial, on land, or aquatic, and terrestrial weeds can be herbaceous or woody. Herbaceous weeds do not produce woody tissue, and their top growth dies back each year. They include grasses and broadleaves. Grass leaves are narrow, stand upright, have parallel veins, and are monocots, have one seed leaf, or cotyledon, in the seedling stage. Grasses grow from a point at or below the soil surface, so they are not killed by mowing or grazing. Broadleaves have variously shaped leaves with net-like veins and are dicots, have two seeds. Broadleaves grow from the top, from leaf-stem junctures, and, in some cases, from roots and stems. On this slide, you're seeing a monocot leaf on the left and a dicot leaf on the right. As you can see on the monocot leaf, the veins run parallel to each other with the lamina. It is called parallel venation. Parallel venation, as you see at the bottom, e.g., grasses, wheat, maize, etc., usually found in monocots. On the right, on the dicot leaf, veins and veinlets form a network in the lamina. It is called reticulate venation. Reticulate venation, e.g., hibiscus, bean, pear, etc., usually found in dicots. Annuals. Annual weeds grow from seed, mature, produce seed for the next generation, and die in 1 year or less. This group has many grass, e.g. crabgrass, and broad-leaved pigweed members. They are spread when their seeds are born on the wind, transported in soil, or carried by animals that have eaten the seeds or have gotten seeds stuck in their fur. Biennials. Some broadleaf weeds are biennials, which have a 2-year life cycle. During the first year, they grow from seed and develop a heavy root and compact cluster of leaves called a rosette. During the second year, they mature, produce seed, and die. Some examples are bull thistle and burdock. Biennials spread in the same ways that annual weeds do. Perennials. Perennial weeds live more than 2 years and include many grasses and broadleaves. They can produce and develop from seed the way annuals do and biennials do. But they can also resprout each year vegetatively, that is, not from seed. Though the top growth of herbaceous perennials dies back in the winter, the plant resprouts in the spring from underground structures, e.g. bulbs, or forms specialized stems that produce roots. Thus, perennials spread by seed and also whenever the specialized reproductive structures are moved, e.g. by farm equipment. Herbaceous weeds reduce crop yields and hinder the growth of lawns and landscape plantings by competing with desirable plants for sunlight, water, and soil nutrients. They provide food and shelter for pests of desirable plants and can contaminate a crop at harvest, e.g. weed seeds in a bag of grass seed. The pollen of some weeds cause hay fever. Flowering weeds attract bees to a lawn, which is a problem for people who are allergic to bee stings. Woody plants are always perennial and are most often spread by seed. Some, such as black locust, can be spread by root shoots. Woody plants become weeds when they grow or climb, in the case of vines, high enough to interfere with power lines and our ability to see road signs. Some can resprout after being cut down, which causes problems when land is being cleared for planting timber species or when brush is cut along roadsides. Aquatic plants provide food, shelter, and oxygen for aquatic animals. However, exotic plants can evade a site and choke out native species and hinder the use of water for recreation. Algae, which are primitive plants, can grow on bolt holes. This increases drag, which increases both cost and pollution due to a reduced fuel efficiency. In cooling towers, algae can plug piping and screens and accelerate corrosion and pitting of important components. Population explosions of algae in surface waters can produce toxins that harm people and wildlife and can also cause oxygen depletion in the water when the algae die and decompose. Aquatic weeds are spread on boat holes, in ballast water, and on the feet of water birds. Some are perennials and can resprout from vegetative structures. Efforts to remove the weeds by cutting can sometimes result in more weeds because of this. Microorganisms are the smallest pest. Fungi include molds, mildews, mushrooms, and many plant pathogens. They are a bit like plants in their growth habits, but they do not make their own food. Instead, they extract nutrients from organic sources, such as exposed liquids, soil organic matter, and living or dead plants and animals. Fungi are the most common cause of plant disease, cause wood decay, e.g. dry rot, or form mold and mildew in structures. In addition to causing problems by feeding on plants, some fungi can also produce toxins that further harm the plants. Others produce toxins in stored grain that can be lethal to livestock. Most fungi reproduce by means of spores, which function about the way seeds do and can be spread on the wind or in rain splash. Fungi also spread when infested in soil or plants are transported. Bacteria are single-celled organisms that reproduce by dividing in two. They cause many plant diseases, such as fire blight in pear and cucumber wilt. Bacteria can also cause disease in people. An example is Legionnaire's disease, which can occur when bacteria enter a building's airspace after reaching high populations in poorly managed cooling tower water. Bacteria can be spread by insects in infested soil and organic matter, and even on pruning tools. Viruses are too small to be seen even with an ordinary microscope and are usually recognized from the symptoms they induce on the infected plant. Viruses invade a healthy host through wounds or during pollination. Insects that feed with piercing sucking mouthparts, aphids, whiteflies, leafhoppers, mosquitoes, as well as chewing insects, beetles, can transmit viruses while feeding. Viruses can also be spread by nematodes. Quite often, the first place you'll see pests mentioned on a pesticide label is right up front near the product name. However, the wording is generally vague, e.g. for flying and crawling insects. If specific pests are mentioned, the list is rarely exhaustive. Likewise, the sites where you can use the product to control particular pests might also be mentioned in vague terms or not at all. Generally speaking, the mentioning of pests near the product name on the label is just intended to give potential buyers a quick, rough idea of whether or not the product might be useful to them. To find out exactly which pests and sites a pesticide is labeled for, you need to read the Directions for Use section of the label. Note that the list of pests may be different for different sites. For example, a pesticide that is labeled for use both indoors and outdoors might list ants only under outdoor pest. As you can see on the current slide, we're looking at pests controlled by a specific product. You can also see we have a section for indoor pest, outdoor pest, and even wood-infesting pest. Take a quick moment to look at the section here of the label. A pesticide label might say it can be used against a particular weed species, but only if the plants are 2 to 8 inches high. Another product might be labeled for use against first or second instars of a pest insect, but not against the later instars or adults. The reason for this is that as the pest grows, their susceptibility to a pesticide might change. Quite often, pests are more sensitive when they are younger, e.g., weed seedlings or insect larvae. For similar reasons, a label might also specify that the site, e.g., plant or animal to be protected, must be in a particular age or size range. For example, a flea control product might be labeled for use on adult dogs or cats, but not on puppies or kittens, because young animals are more sensitive to chemicals and might be poisoned by the product. Always read the Directions for Use section of a product label before you purchase the product to make sure the pesticide is labeled for what you need it to do. Chapter 3. We defined a pesticide as any substance or mixture of substances used to directly control pests or to prevent or reduce the pest damage they cause. Therefore, a pesticide is defined based on what it does rather than where it comes from. But knowing where pesticides come from will help you understand them. So we'll begin there. Pests have posed problems for us throughout recorded history. So it should be no surprise that people have been using pesticides for centuries. We have obtained pesticides from our physical environment and living organisms, or have made them ourselves. As you can see, the chrysanthemum-based botanical pesticides are natural compounds derived from the chrysanthemum flowers. Pesticides that come from our physical environment are typically mineral in origin. We use sulfur against plant pathogenic fungi. Copper controls aquatic plants, mollusks, and fungi, and arsenic and borate are toxic to insects. Diatomaceous earth is finely ground fossilized algae that causes insects to dehydrate. You can see on the right a borate powder. We can also derive pesticides from living organisms. Plants produce many chemicals to protect themselves from insect pests. Pyrethrum, rotenone, and nicotine are examples of chemicals we have extracted from plants and use as botanical insecticides. As you can see on the right, derived from tobacco plants, nicotine has long been recognized as a natural insecticide. Insects produce hormones and pheromones, which we can use to control them. These chemicals do not kill insects. Instead, they interfere with development and mating. This reduces or prevents insect damage, so these chemicals are considered to be pesticides. Insect hormones regulate growth and development. For example, hormones are involved when an insect molts and it passes from larva or nymph into the adult stage. By exposing insects to hormones, we can disrupt their normal development to the extent that the insects fail to reproduce or even advance to the adult stage. Pheromones are chemical signals between insects. In some cases, as with Indian meal moths and Japanese beetles, we have been able to use mating pheromones to attract males into traps. This helps monitor pest populations and can help control pests, though pest damage may actually increase if more insects are attracted to an area than are killed in the traps. The bacterium Bacillus thuringiensis, or BT, produces a toxin that disrupts feeding by the larvae of some species of mosquitoes, moths, and beetles. Microbial pesticides containing BT can be used to control these pests. The gene for the toxin has even been put into some crop plants, such as COM. The plants then produce the toxin, thereby protecting themselves from the pest larvae. Some soil fungi colonize plant roots without harming the plant. When used as a seed treatment, the fungi outcompete pathogenic fungi for access to the seedling's roots and prevent plant diseases. Most pesticides we use today are man-made and have some advantages over naturally occurring pesticides. In general, they are easier to produce in large quantities. Though they are expensive to develop, they can be easy to handle. Also, chemical companies can, to some extent, design a pesticide to meet a particular need because they know what properties they want the end product to possess. For example, some pyrethroids, which are synthetic variations of naturally occurring pyrethrum, can pose less risk than the natural pesticide. There are many types of pests, so it makes sense that there are many types of pesticides used against them. In fact, as the following table shows, we typically classify and name pesticides based on the pests they control. Take a few moments to review this table. You're going to see the type of pesticide on the left and the target pest to be controlled on the right. As you can see, the term pesticide covers a broad range of substances. Many people mistakenly think the word only applies to insecticides. It is important that you know better to ensure that you use and handle pesticides properly. How pesticides differ. We've seen that pests within any group can be very different from each other and can cause a variety of problems. So, it is unlikely, for example, that any one insecticide will be effective in every situation. The same is true for other types of pesticides. Different products will have different attributes that will make them more effective than others in certain situations. This allows you to pick among pesticides to find the one that will best suit your needs. Within each of the pesticide types listed in the table earlier, different pesticides will control pests in different ways. Some insecticides disrupt an insect's nervous system, some disrupt molting and development, and others inhibit feeding. Likewise, herbicides inhibit seedling growth or disrupt photosynthesis. The way a pesticide acts on a pest is called its mode of action. We often group pesticides into classes based on their mode of action. For example, organophosphate insecticides interfere with proper nerve function. Knowing a pesticide's mode of action can be important in developing an effective program to control a pest. In addition to the mode of action, insecticides can differ in how long they remain effective and how they get into insects. Residential insecticides provide control for hours, days, weeks, or even longer after the application. They are desirable when a pest possesses a constant threat, yet the pesticide will present little risk to people or the environment. The pesticide remains active after application, so the pest does not need to be in the treatment area at the time of application. For example, residual insecticides can be applied below the soil line around foundations to protect structures from termites. Non-residual insecticides are effective only at the time of application or for a short time afterward. They are effective only if the pest is active in the treatment area at the time of application. They are useful in situations where the pest is unlikely to return or where people and pets might be exposed to pesticide after an application if you had used a residual insecticide. A contact insecticide kills insects that come into contact with it. This might be when an insecticide is sprayed directly on insects or when the insect walks on a surface, e.g. leaf, house foundation, that has been treated with a residual insecticide. A stomach poison is effective only if an insect swallows it, as when an insect feeds on a treated plant or eats poison bait. A systemic insecticide is a special kind of stomach poison that is absorbed by and spreads throughout a treated plant or animal. An insect is killed when it feeds on any part of the plant or animal. When selecting an herbicide, you need to be aware of how it's taken up by the plant and which group of weeds it kills. A contact herbicide kills plant tissue in the immediate vicinity of where it was absorbed into the top growth to which it is applied. It controls annual and biennial weeds and any type of weed seedling. However, perennial weeds that have produced underground structures will resprout if you kill only the top growth. A systemic herbicide will kill established perennials because it is absorbed at the point of contact and then moves throughout the entire plant so that it reaches and kills the underground structures. Selective or narrow spectrum herbicides kill some plants but cause little or no injury to others. Most selective herbicides kill either broadleaf plants or grasses. They are useful in crop fields, lawns, landscapes, and other areas where weeds grow alongside desirable plants. Some are so selective that they kill crabgrass but not turfgrass in lawns. Non-selective or broad-spectrum herbicides kill any plant they contact. They are used when no plants are wanted in an area, such as parking lots, under guardrails, along railroad tracks, or in industrial sites. Most fungicides are protectants that prevent fungi from infecting a plant, e.g., by inhibiting fungal growth, and thus must be applied before disease starts. Because fungal spores are microscopic, protectants must thoroughly cover the plant surfaces and need to be applied repeatedly to protect new growth. Protectants are useful when disease is almost certain to occur if no action is taken, as is often the case in fruit and vegetable production and on golf courses. A few fungicides called systemics or eradicates enter and move inside a plant to control existing infections. Because of their systemic activity, spray coverage is not as critical as they may not have to be applied as often as the protectants. Systemics are sometimes used when a protectant isn't applied in time. A bait containing an acute rodenticide will kill a rat or mouse in a single feeding. However, a rodent would have to visit a bait several times to be killed by a multi-dose anticoagulant rodenticide. While this may seem undesirable, there are advantages to the multi-dose approach. The products tend to be less toxic and so pose less risk to children and pets, and rodents are less likely to avoid the baits because they don't suspect that the baits have killed other rodents. Materials containing pesticide. Pesticides are sometimes incorporated into or onto other products, either to protect those products or to make the pesticide more effective or easier to apply. Such products are sometimes referred to as pesticide-impregnated materials. The general public often does not realize the pesticide is present in such products, but as a certified applicator, you need to be aware that pesticides can be present in many forms. Common examples of materials which have pesticide in or on them at the time of purchase include treated seed. Seed is often treated with fungicide and sometimes insecticide to protect it and the developing seedling from pests in the soil. Treated seed must be colored with a dye that clearly distinguishes it from untreated seed. Weed and feed lawn care products. These products contain herbicide-impregnated fertilizer. They allow you to control weeds and fertilize a lawn by applying a single product. Livestock ear tags and pet flea and tick collars. These items contain insecticide that spreads through the animal's skin to protect it from fleas, ticks, and/or biting flies. Treated lumber. Wood that will be used in contact with the ground or water, e.g. railroad ties, fence posts, deck supports, telephone poles, marine pilings, is treated with wood preservative to protect wood from fungi and insects. Generally speaking, the type of pesticide will often be prominently displayed on a pesticide product label, as this is often the first thing a person is looking for when they choose a product to buy. The type of pesticide will usually be part of or near the product name. If it isn't, the pest control may be displayed there, and you can use that information to determine the type of pesticide. You can also look for a general information section on the label, which will typically indicate the type of pesticide. To get more detailed product information about the type of pesticide, e.g. protectant versus systemic fungicide, you need to look at the Directions for Use section of the label. Congratulations, you have completed the course. Please proceed to the exam to receive your credit.